This is the 3 a.m. conversation that you really want to be a fly on the wall for. This is the Sleepless Knights podcast, hosted by Mr. Lobo of Cinema Insomnia and my producer Paul Sanders of BESTOW TV. Those who listen know it's unlike all those other podcasts. This one is for us night people. We obsess on pop culture, we talk movies, talk shop, get weird, do interviews, answer your questions. We take you to the airport and to the laundromat. Okay, well, sometimes we get lost, but we promise you that we will go where no podcast has gone before. Dare you put down as little as $1 American and support our next show? We're getting it ready for you now. All you can hear for $1 or more an episode. Please join us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast, all one word, SLEEPLESSKNIGHTSPODDcast. Only one D in podcast, even though we emphasize the odd in our pODDcast. We want normal people with real jobs to find us. Sleepless Knights Podcast on Patreon.
Once again, we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters. Our executive producer for tonight's podcast is Anita Arivnik. Thanks again, Anita. All systems go.
Attention, Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
3, 2, 1.
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast.
Wait. What?
Yeah, Sleepless Knights.
What?
Sleepless Knights. You're interrupting the intro, Paul.
Oh, okay. Well, can we do it right this time? Ready? In 3?
Well, no. Okay, all right.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast.
Yo, you did it again.
I know. I did it properly. The first time.
Can we do it the right way?
Paul, this is the reboot, so this has to be 25% different. So 25% different of Sleepless Knights is Slapless Gnats. You know, you're slapping a gnat that's biting you, maybe?
So
I don't know.
Wait, so is it Slapless Gnats or Slapless Good Gnats?
Gno. It's not gnats, it's gnats.
Okay.
That's how you pronounce that.
Well, why are we changing the title?
I'm Mr. Oboe, and you're Pill.
Pill?
Pill. Yeah.
That's a tough one to swallow.
I thought you'd say that. Yeah. So the whole episode, I thought we could talk about these sort of reboots, reimaginings. We had the 25% show, which I think was sort of our reboot show. But then I thought, well, should we do a continuation of the 25% show, or should we just reboot the whole concept of doing a reboot show? So this is the reboot of the reboot show. And I think in the reboot of the reboot show, I figured we reboot ourselves so we can be Slapless Gnats. I'll be Mr. Oboe. You be Pill. Maybe you could be the, let's see, what sounds like pantsless.
Pants full?
A
lot of
maybe,
pants?
Yeah. Maybe the lot of pants? We'll have to work on that.
The Pantaloons pants producer.
The Pantaloons. producer.
I mean, this is kind of a fun concept. What would Wakeless Days be then?
It wouldn't be anything. It wasn't anything in the first place. Yeah, maybe instead of pantsless, it could be. Hold on, I'm writing it down here. You could just be the painless producer.
I'm in a lot of pain. My back kind of hurting me right now, so I wish I was painless.
The painful producer.
Painful producer? Or am I causing other people pain just from having to hear my voice like fingernails on a chalkboard?
Well, maybe the Sleepless Knights can come up with something better for your new nickname.
Oh wait, the Sleepless Knights? I thought we were the Slapless Gnats.
I mean, excuse me, the Gnats out there. This is going to take some getting used to. You kind of threw it all off at the beginning.
All right, ready?
Challenging.
And 3, 2, 1.
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Slapless Gnats podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Obo. And floating out in space is my producer, Pill, also known as the painful producer to some, or something better that we haven't figured out yet. We have adjusted our approach so that we can rebrand and re-trademark this new version. We're going to be talking about kind of present day furtherings of your favorite franchises as we have before, but not as we did before because this is the reboot of the reboot show, right?
I kind of lost track of how many reboots we had. The reboot.
Too many reboots.
Reboot. So if we reboot the reboot, do we go back to the original?
I don't know. We'll check with the focus groups. We're talking about now. You've been watching. Is there a rebooted property you've been enjoying recently? Because I thought we were talking about something before.
I got tired. I got tired of Groundhog Day, and there is a show based off of the concept of Groundhog Day, but I haven't caught it yet. It's on Hulu, and I can't think of the name right now. I will look that up by the time we get back, which means probably never.
Okay.
But while waiting for our call here, I was actually ingesting Cobra Kai while we were.
And that's a G.I. Joe reboot, right?
If it is, it's a really bad one.
Okay.
No, it's the Karate Kid reboot.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know about that.
I mean, is it a reboot? It's kind of it just continues the story.
See, that's the thing it's a wholly new property with a different approach, and there's a 25-year or more gap?
Pretty much. I mean, spoilers for those who are listening, but I'm the painful producer, so jab your fingers in your ears and scream out in pain. You won't hear this. But the central character is Johnny, and it just pretty much picks up his story from the original. The original was what, 84? Something like that?
Something like that. 84, 86 maybe. I'm not Karate Kid fans will tell us.
So as far as goes,
it's not about Ralph Macchio.
He's in it. But the main character seems to be more about Johnny than it is about Ralph.
That's interesting. Well, and
it's a whole series about like reversals. He kind of views Daniel as being the villain more so than him, or him being the bully rather than the other way around. And it's like when you add some of the stuff up, it kind of makes sense because a lot of those dealings were in between. John Kreese, the sensei from the Cobra Kai, and Mr. Miyagi, and they were like setting up the fights and everything else. So there was a lot of things going on where it's like, if you kind of look at it that way, where it's like Johnny wasn't really involved in a lot of that stuff, so he can look at it at this point of view, and it almost
like
makes
if
sense.
those two guys were kind of put up against each other.
Yes.
Versus Johnny being the bad guy.
Right. Now, don't get me wrong. Johnny has really diminished moral values. He is not the hero of this adventure whatsoever.
So he's an anti-hero at best.
Yes, but he is the central character of the story because, of course, it's called Cobra Kai. So the bad guys are kind of the feature versus the Karate Kid.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, again, I guess the question we need to ask ourselves in our reboot show is it actually a reboot? And and I kind of want to say it is at least a reboot of the franchise, because this is something that hasn't been continuing. There's been no Karate Kid product for quite a long time.
If you don't count the next Karate Kid and you don't count the Will Smith Karate Kid with his son, which was a reboot. That was a reboot. However, Will Smith is one of the producers of this series, so
he probably
owns the rights.
Maybe owns the rights or has some. Yeah, exactly. There's some.
It's him and his wife are producers.
Some kind of obligation because of his connection to the reboot. That's really interesting. Yeah, so this is something that they've been trying to sort of keep going. Was there ever a Karate Kid video game? I feel like there must have been.
Well, there was one for the NES. I used to have it. It was made by LGN.
Okay.
It was a tough-ass game, but I beat it.
Oh, wow. All right. Working up those thumb muscles.
Catching the flies, breaking the ice, dodging the hooks.
It's wax the floor, or wax the
paint
whatever, wax on, wax off, right?
Paint the fence.
So, again, this is a situation where they've taken a property that we know and enjoy, and basically trying to make it viable for an audience in today, right? And so they've completely turned it inside out, and it is a wholly different show. It's sort of a spin-off, I guess. Might even call it a spin-off.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, because but
we're not spinning off very far if it's all the same characters.
I mean, you have Johnny, the original actor, and you have Daniel, the original actor, but they're more, I mean, aside from Johnny being the central character, they're kind of taking on the roles of the senseis themselves. So Daniel's kind of being more like Mr. Miyagi, and Johnny's being more like John Kreese. So the more central characters are their students, their pupils.
I see.
Those little things in the middle of their eyes.
Yes, those pupils. Well, I see you're watching it there with your eyeballs. I just saw something that I guess we can sort of talk about and not talk about because I don't want to spoil it for you, but I just saw the Bill and Ted reboot. Now, do you think that's a reboot, or not really a reboot because it's the same guys?
I feel that's in the same boat, where I feel like it's still kind of sequel territory more than reboot.
It is interesting because I feel like a lot of things are doing this, where like the Ghostbusters one and this one, where it's a continuation, but there's been so much time in between that everything is sort of turned inside out and is coming from a slightly different place, in a different direction, with a different maturity. It's I mean, I guess we could, I mean, even Star Wars is kind of 50-50 too.
Yeah, I was gonna say we haven't met our Star Wars quota for this episode, so go ahead with the Star Wars. Is that a reboot?
We haven't. I mean, but I kind of feel like that's a 50-50, where I think part of it is like, okay, Disney's trying to establish this wholly different version of the franchise on the side burner, at the same time trying to wrap up the events of the films that came before it.
Right.
Or
like, what about like Die Hard? Was it what was the last Die Hard? Is that like a kind of a reboot, or was that a sequel? It seemed like that they were trying to involve like his children.
Right. See, and that's the thing that all these have in common too, where there's newer, younger characters that I would imagine that they're going to hopefully go into the future, like with Bill and Ted. In this Bill and Ted Bogus Journey, at the very end of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, they have little babies from
Bill Jr. and Ted Jr., like in Bogus Journey, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that...
And they're little boys.
They are little boys. But in this movie that just came out, Bill and Ted Face the Music, which, by the way, I want to say right here, that is the worst title they possibly could have come up with for this movie.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that one.
I mean, because I feel like I know there was a certain amount of studio meddling. I think the second movie was supposed to be Bill and Ted Go to Hell.
Right.
But for the audience's perspective, we have Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, right? Mm-hmm. Then we have Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. So we're already kind of establishing a format where it's in their vernacular.
Right.
It's, Face the Music is something their dad would say,
right.
I feel like it should have been like Bill and Ted's Heinous Future, or Bill and Ted's Later Days, or, Bill and Ted's, gnarly, triumphant, what non-heinous adventure. I don't know.
Now, in the continuity, where does Bill and Ted's excellent comic book adventures come from? I mean, where does that lie? The Evan Dorkin series. Where's that?
Where does that lie? I mean, I read a couple of those comics. It seems like it happens somewhere between Bill and Ted and Bogus Journey, right?
I felt like the comics were after Bogus Journey, because I believe they start with Death and the robots, the evil robots. Oh,
the other us's and the good robots, right? The
evil
good
metal,
us's,
the evil metal dickweeds.
Yeah. Yes. I have something to say about Bill and Ted Jr. from Bogus Journey versus their children in the new movie. It's a lot to unpack, so why don't we just boot ourselves out into the break? We'll reboot our reboot show back out into the break and reboot reloaded 9000 when we come back.
They're gonna fight! I thought Daniel wouldn't fight! He's got no choice! Joseph, you must fight to the finish. Remember, Daniel, son, true strength comes from heart. He's gonna do it!
Discover the secrets of karate with Karate Kid Tri-Action figures.
Concentrate, Daniel, son.
They chop, twist, and kick. Karate Kid Tri-Action figures are each sold separately. And for more action, look for the Karate Kid Competition Center from Remco.
Ready in 3, 2, 1.
Party on, dudes. This is the Sleepless Gnats podcast. I'm Mr. Obo. Pill and I have been talking about.
I really don't like Pill. Can we? I mean, can I take a character's name off of like Bill and Ted?
Like who?
Like Station?
Oh no, I don't want to talk about Station. That's like the worst character from that whole series is Station. He's gross. But he gets
to walk around with his ass hanging out. He gets to get away with not wearing pants.
Now I see why you admire Station. Station from Bogus Journey, I feel like he was like a rejected mascot for Reese's Pieces after E.T. and after the weird blue alien that they had in the Reese's Pieces commercials when they couldn't have him be E.T. anymore. They would probably go to something like the Station character, or maybe the Station character might be in the Honeycomb Hideout, eating honeycomb cereal with the Honeycomb Kids. That's how stupid that character is.
Okay, as you were. All right, ready? In 3, 2.
Are we recording?
1.
We're not dreaming. Where's the Sleepless Nights podcast with?
Not Sleepless Nights, but okay.
Oh, Sleepless Gnats. I don't know.
We're gonna get sued.
One more time.
All right, 3, 2, 7.
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Gnats podcast with Mr. Obo.
I mean, if we're the Sleepless Gnats, would we even be dreaming to begin with?
I guess we could be. I don't know, buzzing. I don't know. Let's not get too deep into it. Right. We were talking about Bill and Ted, and you were saying you liked Station. You liked the character Station.
Station was fine. I had no problems with Station. I love Death. Death is like my favorite character in the whole series.
Death is amazing, and he is equally amazing in the sequel. And there's no Station in the.
Oh well, then I'm not even going to see the sequel then.
And Face the Music. I always forget the name of it. Face the Music. I have to force myself. Oh that's right. It means absolutely nothing other than it's just a double entendre.
It sounds like something like MTV would have. Is like Face the Music. It's like, Face the Music, end poverty.
Yeah.
Donate today.
Yeah, exactly. Rock the vote. I just feel like I said, Triumphant Return would have been good. Most Triumphant would have even been better, right? Most Triumphant Return.
Less heinous,
or not heinous. It's weird because when I tell people I like Bill and Ted, they're always really surprised that I like Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a very righteous dude on first glance. I know, big surprise. But I think that, again, I like it because I'm kind of laughing at those characters. I mean, those characters are idiots in these movies. And but to be honest, the kids who act like that for real, like who I went to school with, I hated those guys. Like, I almost didn't go see this movie because it reminded me so much of the stoner idiots that I had to deal with in high school. So I wasn't really super excited to go see the movie initially. And this is how square Mr. Lobo is that my parents went to go see it and said it was great. And then I begrudgingly went to go see it.
Fine, okay.
Okay, you're not Back to the Future. Impress me. And it was great. It was really fun. I had a good time in spite of myself. So, in following these movies, and we watched all three of them again, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and then we watched Bill and Ted's Face the Music.
But still not Bill and Ted Excellent's comic book, though.
No, we did watch a couple of episodes of the animated Bill and Ted, which is pretty racist, actually.
What about the live action show? They had that too.
Go to China to try to get another Ming vase, and you want the number 10? Yeah. It's of its time, but the what about the live action show? Let's not speak of the live action show.
Did you eat your Bill and Ted cereal while you were watching that?
I should have, but it actually was just rock hard.
Yeah.
So I was unable to eat it. That and the Ghostbusters cereal have just turned into stalactites.
You weren't ready for your appendicitis?
Inedible. Yeah. But the boxes look nice. The boxes were always the best part anyway, so it really doesn't matter that the cereal's inedible. It wasn't very edible when it was new.
I mean, it's fine when it's rock hard, then it just keeps the boxes from falling off the shelf and stuff. It kind of stabilizes them.
I guess we've been kind of jumping around all over the place, but the end of Bogus Journey, they go to the future because they still don't know how to play their instruments. So they do 18 months of intensive training off screen so that they can perform on stage. And
start world peace.
And yes, with their crappy made-for-TV sounding heavy metal music.
Well, it was a cover of Kiss.
Okay,
it's a Kiss song.
All right, it's still the way they perform it. It doesn't none of that music in any of the movies would ever save the world. It sounds like a bunch of executives getting together trying to figure out what the world's greatest song would be. And figuring out via committee what that would sound like.
I love what I loved about Bogus Journey was that I was a big Faith No More fan, and Faith No More is always kind of on the, people only ever recognize Epic, and that's the only song that they've ever produced, even though they've got tons of music. And I love I don't know if he's the guitarist or the bassist. He makes the appearance in the beginning of that movie.
Right, because the Church of Faith No More, which is kind of funny because there's a Church of Faith No More, and I feel like they immediately broke up after that movie came out.
Well, that's why the third movie came out, because Faith No More got back together. They're putting out new albums, so
it's finally going to happen.
That's why they had to face the music.
Couldn't fix the world. So at the end of that movie, they do their they use the time travel to actually learn how to play their instruments. And in that 18 months, they have a couple of babies. And so they're wearing these little, what are those called? Papooses, baby carriers. I don't know what those things are called. Where you're wearing your baby on your back. Anything?
Sling?
Yeah, baby sling. No. Baby carrier.
A baby hammock?
Baby hammock. Yeah, banana hammock.
But for your baby.
But for a baby. No, they've got they've got their children. They're carrying their children on their backs, and they say this is, I think, Bill Jr. and Ted Jr., or baby little Bill and little Ted, whatever. And so at that point, we believe that they have two sons. I mean, they for all intents and purposes, they have two sons at the end of the Bogus Journey.
And everybody points out that that's a glaring mistake.
Which is honestly a throwaway joke like everything else in the movie. I mean, really, the plot of all those movies is just a device to deliver a bunch of jokes. I don't know how seriously you can really be upset about continuity errors with the plot. But anyway, in Face the Music, they have 2 daughters. So one of them is Theodora, I think, and the other one is Wilhelmina, something like that. So they are Bill and Ted. And I guess they would be stupid enough to call their daughters Junior. So I guess we're supposed to just believe that Bill and Ted's daughters, or Bill and Ted's sons were our daughters. It doesn't really matter. They had 2 tiny babies in the first movie.
Could have been nicknames as far as you knew.
And that's the idea. Is I think that they were thinking, well, they're just babies anyway. And and I think they actually tried doing it with 2 boys, and it was like the auditions were horrible. It was unwatchable. And then they tried the 2. They tried, probably auditioned hundreds of girls, I'm imagining, and then they went, "Oh, okay, wow, no, works better with girls than it does with boys."
And it's probably the better of the imaging, the PC imaging, the social justice imaging. Of wanting to have like girls in the lead and not have to be a sausage fest all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to say that. I think that again,
there's plenty of ways to say it. That was probably one of the worst ways to say it, but go on.
Yeah, I think that having more diversity is good. I mean, even in the original Bill and Ted, where they go to the future, you can tell that they really go, okay, we really want to see some color. We want to see different kinds of people. We don't just want a bunch of pasty white boys living the heavy metal future. So, there's definitely, I think there's always been a little bit of a social conscience with the movies. So a diversity in roles. I think of Bernie Casey being awesome and Pam Grier being awesome. I think that it's good that they found and allowed 2 young girls to play stupid in not a dumb blonde way, but a hapless stoner kid kind of way. That's usually like not an unattractive sort of thought of to be unladylike or unattractive way to portray a couple of young girls. So having them be a couple of girls who probably haven't taken a bath in 2 weeks, playing video games and geeking out over music, that's a kind of kid that you never really see in a movie, So I think in that regard, I think that was kind of, cool that they have a couple of, girls who were atypical as far as how girls are portrayed in films.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that their performances are great. Like they're funny, they're charming. They're not annoying. So that's that. Again, I feel like they probably experimented until they found something that worked. A lot of the things they wanted to do in the original film, they didn't. I mean, I think the whole reason they made the movie is they thought they were going to do a Back to the Future 2 going into it. They're like, okay, we'll have them go into the events of the first movie. We'll have a de-aged Bill and a de-aged Ted and a de-aged Rufus, or a de-deaded Rufus, or undeaded Rufus. And we'll just have the new movie happening inside of the first movie somehow. But I feel like, I guess ultimately they either couldn't afford it, or maybe they decided it wasn't working,
or it was just too long. Because this has been in production. I know the third movie's been in production forever. They announced that a long time ago.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's almost a fan-made film at some point. The fans wanted this.
Yeah, the fans did really want this, and I think the fans are definitely kind of seem very much involved in this. I don't know if you remember when they were asking people to make videos and send them in to be used in the movie.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm lost in space, so I don't see a lot of things.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, no, I did not know that.
So and I don't think this spoils anything, but in the end credits, you see all these people jamming and air guitaring from all over the world.
Okay.
all, people in wheelchairs, people in different countries, people in huts, just everyone all over the world jamming, to some crappy made for cable music. Okay. And that is really interesting because I think it kind of represents an interactivity in cinema that we don't see a whole lot, to where you're basically crowdsourcing your audience for content for your film that they're paying to see.
Well, they did that with Gem.
With the Gem movie?
With the Gem movie, when it came out, they asked all their friends, and they shot all their friends. The thing is like the Gem movie is just a huge like kick in the nuts. It's nothing at all like what the cartoon is, or what the people like of the cartoon. And then they went and they asked all the Gem fans to I guess like air guitar, or no, I think they were to say why they're fans of Gem.
Yeah.
And the thing is like the movie is not like the cartoon, and the fans are talking very heartfelt about the cartoon and why they like this. Yeah. And had they watched the movie, I can't speak for the people that sent the videos in, but they probably were like, no, my love is for this cartoon, and you twisted it. You made it sound like I love these people, this movie, and this movie is garbage.
Yeah. It's interesting when they try to reboot or recreate something, and it's going on the good graces of what's come before, and the fuel from the fans. You've got this thing that's, again, no studio was probably really that interested in Bill and Ted coming back. This is something that kind of came from a grassroots sort of level. And you do have these things where they come back and they're powered by the fandom, but then it doesn't quite have the same energy that the original had. When we come back, I wanted to say something briefly about the Addams Family animated reboot, which I didn't see, but just in the way that they advertised it, it turned me off to where I didn't even want to go see it, which, again, it might have been good. I don't know. But we'll be back with more of our, what is it? Mr. Well, what is it? Oh, who am I again?
You're Mr. Oboe, and I'm, for some dumb reason, I'm Pill, which I'd rather be Station or Death or something, but whatever.
All right. Well, we'll be back with more Pill and Oboe's Bogus Reboot show right after this.
Get down, full-on robot chubby.
Once upon a time, there was Area 707. Dixie's mom is a little witchy, and they had a lot of weird stuff. And we had all our weird stuff in there, too. So much weird stuff that we opened our own booth at Cackleberry Antique Mall that we called Vault 816. And it is so overflowed with weird, cool stuff now that we have another booth, 712. So please do us a favor and come out to Paradise, Pennsylvania, Cackleberry Farms Antique Mall, and visit Area 707, Vault 816, and 712, and get this damn stuff off our hands. I mean, it's an embarrassment of cool stuff. Wouldn't you say, Paul?
And eclectic crap.
Eclectic crap. I couldn't say it better myself. All kinds of stuff. Collectibles, antiques, toys, games, and even your favorite Mr. Lobo merchandise. All right now for you to enjoy. I sort of teased the Addams Family thing when we went out. They had this whole thing where they had everyone around the world snapping their fingers to the Addams Family song. And I know that the whole point of that is to go, okay, everybody loves the Addams Family. But what I sort of saw it as is that, like, it's really cool and socially accepted to be in the Addams Family. And I feel like that was really counter to how the Addams Family are. I mean, the Addams Family, they go by the beat of their own drummer. They don't really care what's popular or accepted or the status quo or trendy. You know, that's sort of, they're kind of above all of that, you know, and the way they sort of made it look like, you know, I don't know. I felt like they really should have been going for the awkward, weird kids who feel disenfranchised from everybody versus trying to say, hey, this is this thing that's really hip and now and everybody loves it. You know, give us your money one more time.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's just Hollywood controlling, I mean, the estate of whomever. What was the guy who made the Addams Family?
Charles Addams.
Charles Addams. Okay, so it's probably what is Hollywood controlling the state of Charles Addams? So is it following in the same path as like Charles Schultz, where when Charles Schultz died, he's like, you know, once I'm dead, no more animated Peanuts anything.
Yeah.
And then what had happened is that Hollywood found this loophole where it's like, well, he said no animated, but he didn't say anything about new media. And so as long as we computer generate, we're not animating. So therefore we can do new media. And that's how we can have.
They did it like that.
That's how they did the Peanuts movie. And that's how like the Apple TV has an ongoing Peanuts TV series as well. And that's their loophole because he said in his will, he's like, I don't want any of this anymore. I mean, that's what I heard anyway.
Yeah.
This is what I'm passing on as fact.
Yeah, right. It's exactly. How much of this is just sort of like nerd urban myths? Nerdban myths? Nerdban myths? Nerdban legends? There it is.
Wow.
Nerdban. That's hard to say. I do feel like a lot.
Wasn't he on Seinfeld?
What, Nerdman? That's Newman.
Oh.
Maybe that's the 25% version of Newman. Nerdman.
But like Peanuts isn't even a 25% change. It's actually just a production.
It's just the Peanuts. They did a CG version. And, you know, I didn't know all that about Charles Schultz not wanting there to be any more animated Peanuts after his death. I didn't know anything about that, if that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I was turned off about the fact that they were CG. Supposedly it was very faithfully done as far as how it was staged and that you still don't see the adults and that his kids were involved in that. I didn't actually see it. Did you see it?
I saw it. Yeah, I watched it.
Okay. Did you like it?
I liked it. I actually thought it was pretty well done. It was modern, but it still had that appeal of the earlier Peanuts from an earlier time, from like the 80s or 70s or whenever.
Because the Peanuts did have, and that's the great thing about the Peanuts is that it was so multi-generational. Like, you know, I was in the 70s, I was watching the ones from the 60s, and in the 80s, you were watching the ones from the 70s.
Right.
And we all thought it was for us brand new and not for anyone else.
Right.
You know, so that I think is one of the beautiful things about the Peanuts. The other thing is it all kind of takes place in their own world, and that world has its own laws and rules. And of those kids, or really not real. I mean, they are kids, but they're sort of proxies for sort of different patterns of adult behavior. I feel like you could do a whole psychology course analyzing different personality types of adults based on those kids. You know, what was great about that show was the reason I was really scared in seeing the CG one is because right off the bat, it didn't look like it was drawn from Charles Schultz's hand, you know.
Right.
And the only thing that makes me want to watch the Peanuts movie now is that I came across some old ViewMaster reels. You know how I love ViewMaster, and you know, and I had these as a kid of the ViewMaster as a 3D. Experience, and as you know, the Peanuts are very 2D, like fiercely 2D.
Right.
But they did several ViewMaster reels where they built models of all the characters, little dolls of them. Charlie Brown with a big round head and everything. They made them probably out of a plasticine or clay, and they dressed them in clothes. And they just staged them and took these diorama pictures that were still kind of set up like the Peanuts comic strip, but everything has shadow and texture And when I saw those, I went, this kind of really reminds me of how the CG one looks.
Right.
And so there is kind of a precedent of them being 3D, and maybe I shouldn't let that one thing keep me from watching it.
Yeah, because like the 3D was kind of weird because it wasn't really traditional 3D. They still kind of seemed flat. But then there was things that I would notice, like if they would show Charlie Brown's shirt, there was texture. If they showed his shoes, there was texture to it. They had like specific texture. But otherwise, they were still kind of hand-drawn still. They still kind of had that appeal.
It is interesting to try to continue something long after, I guess if you own the rights to something, you want to keep it relevant.
Right. I mean, I feel that they did Peanuts a little bit better than like, say, a lot of the Dr. Seuss animated stuff. Because it's like they just get so far away from the message once they started doing the Dr. Seuss stuff. And I know his widower said no more live action. After Cat in the Hat, she's like, that's it, no more live action. It's all animated. But even like the animated stuff just gets so far removed from the formula, because I think the last one I saw was like the Lorax, and it's just like, which may be the last thing that's out, but it's just so far removed from the heart and the message of that film.
I don't understand how you can do that, because I feel like the message is already there, the story is already there, the style is already there. Like, I don't know, is there that much of a desire to put your own stamp on it, or are we in a 25% situation where they have to have it a certain amount different?
I don't know, but like the widow is like, his widower is all involved in all that stuff. She has to approve it. So, but she may not have the vision.
Wait, widow or widow? You said widower.
Widower, widowee.
Is a widow. It's just a widow. Unless it's a man.
Is it in the windowsill?
Did Dr. Seuss have a life partner who was a man, or is Dr. Seuss have a wife?
A wife.
Who was a woman. Okay, then it's a widow.
Right.
Yeah.
A widow woman.
A widow woman.
Very widow.
3 inches tall.
Yes.
No, I think that again too, it's really interesting because, like, even though I love my children have zero interest in. I don't want to say zero. That's not fair to say, but they don't have a huge interest in my creative process.
Right.
I don't know if the second I passed away, Dylan or Derek would jump up and start writing episodes of Cinema Insomnia and try to do it the way that I would do it. Like, that's the other part of it too, is that I don't know how much your bloodline really determines how faithful or motivated you're going to be to sustain a certain legacy of something.
Sure.
Is that a bad thing to say? It is kind of, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you have your life and they have their life is kind of, I guess, how I see it with my kids.
Yeah. But if you passed away somehow, do you imagine your kids going, oh no, Dad wouldn't do it like this?
No.
Or
not at all.
Yeah. Right. So other than like, okay, Dad's famous and I want to keep those checks coming in.
Right.
I don't know. I'm going to sign off on this.
Here, you just do this and give me my 70% or whatever.
Yeah. So, I don't.
Executive producer credit, my 70%, and call it a day.
Because a lot of times it's like, all of this action on the estate of, a certain family or estate of this, and we don't really know what the actual author would have wanted. We just know what their estate wants. I guess going back to Bill and Ted, and I guess, whether
or not.
a
long trip to Bill and Ted from Adam's Family to Peanuts to Dr. Strangelove. No, Dr. Seuss.
And Dr. Seuss's widower.
Or widowee. All relates to Face the Music, Hal, or Challenge the Music, or change your tune. What the fuck is this called again?
I don't know. Bill and Ted's
Change Your Underwear? What?
Bill and Ted's Bitch and Freak Out. That's what they should have called.
All right.
So what I think is interesting in this movie, because again, they do have two younger characters, and these two younger characters, while adult Bill, or I guess older, what would you call this? Over the hill Bill and Ted? I don't. What do you call this era of Bill and Ted? Because a little bit older than middle aged Bill and Ted.
Mean, because they would have been in high school when I was in high school, so they would be my age. So what am I?
I don't know. Well, they were in high school when I was in high school because I graduated in 1988. Technically, since they filmed that movie in 1988, and supposedly this is what they needed to graduate, right?
Was it to graduate or was it just to pass? It's been a while. I haven't watched the original movie.
So we don't know if they're seniors. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't know. I don't think I ever took it as whether or not they were seniors. Maybe they were seniors, and I just never picked up on it. Or
I just figure like that they would flunk out of high school and that it would ruin the rest of their lives. That was how I always interpreted that. But I may have interpreted it that way because I was their same age. It was a similar age.
See, I graduated in '95, but then that movie came out in '89, so it would have been, it was close enough for jazz. See, I made a music pun.
And Mr. Lobo failed his history.
That's because you didn't have Abraham Lincoln come back in time and say, "Party on, dudes."
Apparently, whatever I do in the future was not that important because nobody came back out and helped me pass high school. So Mr. Lobo did not graduate high school. So that's a big bomb drop that they're going to drop right now on this broadcast. What I was thinking with that show is that they were, if they're my age, I'm 50.
Okay.
I'm turning 50.
So they're between 45 to 50.
45 to 50 is how old those characters are. And so while we're following their adventures, and again, spoilers, they don't go back into the past and interfere with young Bill and Ted. Even though the Walmart ads made you think something else was going to happen, because they were able, for Walmart had that de-aging money to do the scene with Bill and Ted interacting with their younger selves for the Super Bowl ad. But the people making the actual movie didn't have that kind of money to do the de-aging, interacting with yourself scenes for this. So they don't do that at all. They have their own adventure going into the future, which I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying that because it's in the trailer. But they just keep going further and further into the future, trying to solve the problems of the present. In the meanwhile, their two daughters are kind of having their own adventures, similar to the adventures that the two of them had in the first movie. So at some point, those two plot lines intersect. But what's interesting is...
Wow, that sounds familiar. That sounds like a radio odd drama that may have come out a couple of weeks ago. I think I got to sue somebody.
Yeah, you might. Well, they probably changed it just enough.
Just enough. They heard our pod drama and they're like, let's go back in time and then change this just enough because.
But I think that it is interesting that if they wanted to, they do have two new characters that if for some reason those two characters catch fire, they could just have their adventures.
They can move forward. They could spin it off.
They could have their own comic
Well, it also
book.
sounds like the movie kind of speaks to two different audiences too. It's like, it speaks to the original audience and it speaks to their children basically.
Yeah, and I think that's hard
both.
to do because sometimes when you try to go and please both audiences, the new audience and the original audience, sometimes you fail to do both. Like I always think of the Lost in Space movie where, the new spaceship was inside of the old spaceship, and the old robot style was inside the new robot style. It's like they didn't commit to any of the things, it's like they just sort of did try to do everything to try to please both audiences simultaneously. And I think sometimes when you try to please everyone, you fail. And that's another aspect that is rarely talked about, is that even though fans don't always get what they want, sometimes they do get what they want, and it's still a disaster.
So you're saying Billy Mooney was inside the actor that was playing Will Robinson? Is that what you're trying to say?
He should have been. That's always my gripe, is that like if you're going to have adult Will Robinson, if that's the whole plot line, is that they run into an adult Will Robinson. If you can't get Billy Mooney, don't even do that storyline. Doesn't make any sense. They should have done a different script entirely. It's like the Alien movie with the space jockey sitting in the chair the same way in another derelict spaceship on another planet that's crashed exactly the same. It's like, you can't tell me that's not just a prequel of Alien if all the same things are happening. If it wasn't going to be a prequel to Alien, then don't do that story.
But then change your mind and then do make it a prequel to Alien.
But then change your mind and do make it a prequel to Alien. Anyway, we're going to, I guess, pause for this prequel to the next part of our podcast.
Audiences are cheering Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
It was kind of like Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Back to the future.
Excellent! Very bodacious.
Party, dude!
It didn't stop for a minute.
It's the kind of movie that girls will like because they're adorable.
Excellent!
Execute them. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Now playing at a theater near you. Check newspapers for details.
So in the break, we were talking about it's always your possibility of failure in going a entirely new direction, being completely faithful, or trying to please both audiences. All of those things could end in failure when you're doing a reboot or a reimagining. I mean, my problem with some of the new stuff in the Star Wars movie is that I feel like we didn't establish the new characters enough, and we didn't get enough of the old characters either.
Right. And there was too much. It was just too much of the old characters and too much of the new that we didn't have enough movie to establish any of that shit.
No, we have, and what it took. We were in the third movie before all the main characters were in the same room together, right?
Well, theoretically, but yes.
Theoretically,
yes, those that were still alive.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, not that all characters have to be in the same room together to be part of a story together, as we proved with our award-winning Wakeless Days pod drama.
Wait, we won an award? Where is it? Is it wrapped in gold? Like, is if I unwrap the gold as cellophane, it becomes like chocolate? Is it chocolate inside? Is it a chocolate award? Is it a gold coin? I really want chocolate right now.
Well, no, it's not chocolate.
You just had like Szechuan shrimp and like fucking like a pizza and a fucking cheesesteak, and I can't have a gold coin.
And I just had an egg and cheese sandwich during the break.
Jesus Christ.
No, this is
most heinous, okay, dude?
We won the tinfoil on the antenna award.
The tinfoil on the top of our head award.
Yeah, right. For least listened to radio drama.
Most likely used to scare rats away radio drama.
Most misunderstood radio drama. Actually, we've been getting good reaction to the radio drama. I think the only I wouldn't call this necessarily negative, but a constructive criticism is they felt there was way too much backstory. It took too long for us to get it started. Introductions on top of introductions on top of introductions. But honestly, I like the slow burn of it because I think that the concept was basically that it's still a podcast up to a certain point, and the story kind of kicks in and takes it over.
I always hold to it's a podcast for the first half.
Yeah.
And then the second half is when all the shit hits the fan, and it's more adventure.
But but to be honest, I really, and maybe it's just because I'm a narrator. I mean, I'm not your narrator in this story, in the Wakeless Days story, but I like storytelling. I don't mind exposition, and I like hearing a story secondhand. I like hearing about something that happened in the past. I like a good ghost story or a good legend told by a character or discovered by someone. I don't have to physically see every single thing happen in a story, or that the things don't have to be present in a linear way. I do like it sometimes when something is a backstory, because you can kind of, in the one hand, the criticism is that you're slowing it down, but in the other hand, you could cover so much ground.
Right.
where it's like you can tell people that a bunch of things happened and you don't have to like physically show all of these things, especially when they're not immediately relevant to see all of those things.
Right.
So I do enjoy a good exposition. I mean, I know it's like a common criticism. We're all programmed to have the MST brain on when we're listening to things and go, oh, this is exposition. Good job with this exposition, Mr. Exposition.
Well, yeah, and the framework has to still maintain, at least for that episode, it still has to maintain the ideal of a podcast. It was supposed to be, the whole idea is you're listening to a podcast. It's just another episode of the podcast until you get halfway through it. So it still has to maintain that framework anyway, to a certain degree, to a certain point.
Well, and it is a podcast. That's the thing, is we are doing a podcast. So there has to be a certain amount of structure to it. But even War of the Worlds is a radio program up to a certain point. Mm-hmm. You're just listening to a radio program that keeps getting interrupted.
You just compared us to War of the Worlds.
We are award-winning, goddammit.
In Ecuador?
Yes, we're number one in Ecuador. Paul was showing Mr. Lobo the stats, or Pill was showing Mr. Obo the stats, and we had
1%.
100%.
I think it was just 1% in Ecuador.
Oh, it was just 1%. Okay,
but so we're number one in Ecuador.
Just number one because 1% is listening, or 100% of one person is listening in Ecuador.
Yep, that one person. Dixie's dad went to Ecuador to listen to us.
He had to get that far away.
Yeah.
And you had to surmise 1 to 3 years of a podcast into one story, using characters that already existed. See how far I have to go to try to compare these things?
No, I'm with it. Good segue.
Using characters that already existed combined with new characters that you're trying to establish. And, at the end of the day, everybody thinks they know how their movie or how their story or how their podcast is going to turn out. When you're standing there, and I've had this a million times. Oh, yeah, I could have wrote that movie. Oh, yeah, I got an idea for a Star Wars movie. Oh, yeah, I got an idea. I could write the Batman movie. And you tell that story, with the chicken fried the cheesesteak dropping out of your mouth, or the hors d'oeuvres, the plate of hors d'oeuvres and the Hawaiian punch. And you're telling that story at the party of how you could have written a better movie, or how you're writing a movie, or how you have an idea for a movie. And then when you actually try to put it into practice, it becomes a much different thing by the time you get to the end of it, where you're like, oh, well, wait, that initial idea that I had doesn't really play out. I don't know if I can commit to that part of that idea anymore, because in the grand scheme of things, I'm not sure if it really works.
Because you have to keep adapting and modifying.
Mm-hmm. We keep adapting and modifying, and you're trying to enjoy it the same way that a listener would enjoy it, or enjoy it the same way that a viewer would enjoy it, I would hope. That's the thing with a lot of these reboots and remakes, is that their motivations are not good. It's like, okay, we want to have a bunch of toys in the stores, or we want to keep the license on this property, so that it doesn't fall into the public domain. There's a lot of negative reasons to continue a series, or our competitors are putting out a movie based on a similar thing. This is a property that we own that's similar. We can try to rip off their idea with a thing that we own.
Now you just compared us to Bill and Ted. That's awesome.
There's a lot of negative reasons to continue something, but even in your best intentions, I think that's why it's difficult. Like with the Bill and Ted movie, a lot of the criticisms I've heard about it, where it's like, well, I thought it was going to be like Back to the Future 2, and they were going to go back inside the first movie again. Or I heard they were going to have this character come back. Or I thought there was going to be more Rufus. Or I thought there was, and it's like, well, it's because you've been hearing people talking about making a movie that isn't made yet.
Back in the day, you went to a movie, you enjoyed it because that's all you knew about that movie, was maybe about a few trailers and a write-up, and that's about it. Where it's like nowadays, you read and watch anything and everything that comes out, that you already know everything about the movie, and all the whole process of every change up until then, that you don't enjoy the movie at the end of the day anyway.
Yeah, you end up creating an expectation that nothing could satisfy, And I feel like that happens a lot, where I think that audiences are becoming we're always talking about spoiling movies. I think we're getting spoiled by I think the audience is getting spoiled more so than the movies are getting spoiled. To where we know so much about the production of the movies, the directors that get fired and hired or changes in the script. And, we've got these things where they're going, oh, well, we're doing this move. We're bringing this property back and we're going to have this actor and this actor and this actor. And so you're going into the movie with all of these expectations that nothing could possibly satisfy, in the old days, especially with the Star Wars movies, we didn't know a lot about those movies. When I was a kid in the 70s, there wasn't very much behind the scenes stuff. They didn't even permit Anthony Daniels to do an American Express commercial because they never wanted to show him outside of C-3PO. No one even knew what Anthony Daniels looked like, except when I saw him interviewed on Bob Wilkins, which was extremely rare. That you saw him out of his costume. It wasn't until after Return of the Jedi when Lucas was kind of like, and honestly, I should have realized this when they refunded my Star Wars fan club and said, hey, it's going to be the Lucasfilm fan club now. Lucas wasn't planning on really making any more Star Wars for a long time, if ever, because they pretty much used up all their ideas for the sequel trilogy in Return of the Jedi. So he was feeling pretty dry at that point on the whole thing. And so right after that, they put out Star Wars to Jedi, the making of the saga, which had all these behind the scenes and how everything was made and every single detail about those movies. But the details of those movies were very guarded. The actors just got little teeny bits of their part. And I don't think David Prowse even knew he was Luke's father.
No, that was the rumor. He said something else like Obi-Wan was your father. That's what he always told us when we would see him at the conventions. Is he said, his lines were Obi-Wan is your father. Yeah,
and and again, it might have just been because that got leaked that they just changed the storyline, and I don't know if that's good either. Where if like, oh, okay, this got spoiled, so we're just going to make it something totally different. Yeah. Even though that's not the story.
Well, I don't know. Nowadays, we just hack everybody's computer and just dump everything out on the internet and leak it all.
Yeah. Well, now we've got things like seeing Ray Park getting orally satisfied in a Twitter post. Yeah. And it's like, we used to be protected from that sort of thing. We didn't know what kind of people the actors are or were, not saying that. I mean, I met Ray Park and I interviewed him, and he was delightful when I interviewed him, and I don't know what he's going through in his life or what kind of person he is. It doesn't really matter. It's not my business. But they've dropped him like a hot potato. He's not going to be Darth Maul anytime soon.
Yeah, we're calling to cancel him.
And everyone's calling to cancel him. And, we're kind of, even though this wonderful thing that I was saying at the end of Bill and Ted, where they have all these clips from everybody, this is the other side of that, where, the audience is so involved at every level, behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, all over the place, that it is kind of, hard to, it's like trying to make a magic trick for somebody who is seeing you at every stage of preparing for the magic trick,
Right.
And so there's no surprises anymore. And I think, again, the fact that the Bill and Ted new movie is so well received so far, and I enjoyed it, and I felt like even though I kind of felt like it was on par with Bogus Journey, I think I still like the first one better.
Right. Bogus Journey is always my favorite, so we'll see.
The fact that they would just be able to be on par with those other films with that much of a gap and with everything against it, and to try to do something that's non-cynical and fun in a world that is so dark right now. So I applaud them on that movie just based on that. So I don't know. I know we're kind of approaching the end here. Do you want to say you want to close us out?
Yeah, I'd like to close this out by reading from the Bible of the Bill and Ted Bogus Journey comic. On panel 1, we have Denomalus, and he's saying, "It is time. They have reached the second crucial moment in their destiny. Their message is about to reach millions."
You have been listening to the Sleepless Nights podcast, or should we say, pODDcast.
Podcast.
Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Deadhouse Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as BESTOW TV, at BESTOW.TV, on YouTube /BESTOW TV, on Twitter at BESTOWPROD, PROD, and on Facebook, BESTOW TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else, and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
That's
patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Nights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
Podcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.
Catch you later, Bill and Ted!